What if there was a single garment that could capture both the grace of the East and the confidence of the West? What would it look like? And what if that same garment had witnessed a nation's journey from tradition to modernity? What did it see along the way? In China, this garment has a beautiful name, the Qi Pao. Over the next few minutes, we'll take you into the world of Qi Pao and show you how one piece of clothing captured a century of Chinese women's lives, their struggles, and their beauty. Before we dive into the Qi Pao, let's take a look at what Manchu women wore in the late Qing dynasty. Their garment was known as the banner robe, and this is where the Qi Pao first began. These robes were loose, straight-cut, heavy, and didn't show the body's shape. This design was meant to suit the horseback and archery lifestyle of a nomadic culture. The main focus was on practicality and dignity, not on highlighting curves. 1911 was a year that changed China's fate. The revolution broke out, bringing an end to over 2,000 years of feudal imperial rule. Asia's first republic, the Republic of China, was born. During this time, Chinese society was undergoing a period of intense ideological change. Western ideas of freedom and equality began to flow in, and women started stepping out of the home in pursuit of independence. In terms of clothing, a trend emerged, one that moved away from Manchu styles while also embracing Western influences. The earliest version of the cheongsam, or Qipao, was actually created by modern, educated women influenced by Western ideas. They combined elements of the Manchu robe with the traditional Han-style jacket and skirt. Around this time, women also began wearing short jackets with wide, loose sleeves paired with long skirts, or sleeveless, loose-fitting long vests. Although these outfits were still loose in shape, they began to shed the heaviness and complexity of Qing dynasty robes, moving towards simplicity and lightness, a quiet symbol of women's resistance against physical constraint. The 1920s arrived, and with them a revolution in Chinese thought and culture. In 1919, the May 4th movement erupted. Students took to the streets, chanting for democracy and science. This movement didn't just change politics, it changed everything, including what women wore. Influenced by this new culture movement, a new fashion swept the nation, civilized new dress. So what exactly was it? It was the style pioneered by female students: wide trumpet sleeves, a loose and straight silhouette, and hemlines falling to mid-calf. Gone was the heavy ornamentation of the Qing dynasty. In its place was something fresh, simple, and youthful. Why call it civilized? For the progressive youth of the time, civilized meant simple and natural. The elaborate, heavy decorations of the past, those were seen as symbols of a backward era. Then came 1927, a major turning point. That year, China witnessed the natural breast movement. Yes, you heard that right, natural breast. The government issued decrees urging women to abandon the old binding underwear that compressed their chests. The goal? To embrace the body's natural form. Why did this happen? Many now believe that chest binding was not just a feudal custom, but unhealthy and out of step with the modern world. And so, for the first time, the waist of the Qi Pao began to tighten. The female silhouette started to emerge, subtly, beneath the fabric. Then, in 1929, a landmark moment, the Republic of China government issued the Regulations on Clothing, officially designating the Qi Pao as the formal dress for women. This was the moment the Qi Pao was elevated from a popular fashion to a national symbol. The 1930s marked the golden age of the Qi Pao. At the center of it all was Shanghai, the Paris of the East. It was the largest city in the Far East, a playground for adventurers, and the place where East and West collided most dramatically. Shanghai had glamorous movie theaters showing the latest Hollywood films, and department stores filled with the most fashionable goods from around the world. So why did the Qipao reach its peak here? Because Shanghai was different. It was a treaty port, with foreign powers establishing concessions that brought Western fashion, music, and lifestyles straight to China's doorstep. At the same time, China's elite, its artists and writers, flocked to the city. East and West met in Shanghai, and the Qipao became the most beautiful product of that encounter. Then came a game-changing innovation. Western tailoring techniques arrived in China. Tailors learned to add something called darts at the chest and waist. This small adjustment transformed the Qipao from flat to fitted, from two-dimensional to three-dimensional. For the first time, it could follow the natural curves of a woman's body. Imagine the difference. Before, the dress hung on the body. After, it clung to it. The modesty of the East and the silhouette of the West, both wrapped in a single garment. The next 10 years were an explosion of creativity. Sleeves grew shorter and shorter until they disappeared entirely. Showing bare arms? In old China, that was unthinkable. But in the 1930s, that was fashion. Collars went up and down with names like ingot collar and phoenix immortal collar. Hemlines changed with the seasons. Side slits crept higher and higher, offering glimpses of the leg. Then came 1937. The full-scale outbreak of the Second Sino-Japanese War changed everything. War cast its shadow over the Qipao. Materials grew scarce, life became harder, and the dress adapted. Decorations were stripped away. Hemlines rose to the knee, making it easier to move and even run. This simpler style wasn't just a fashion choice, it was a reflection of the times and a necessity for survival, and it would continue long after the war ended. The year 1949, another moment that would reshape China's destiny. The People's Republic of China was established. From this point forward, the story of the Qipao split into three different paths: on the mainland, in Hong Kong, and in Taiwan. On the Chinese mainland, the Qipao's fate took a sharp turn. In the early days of the new China, the country was busy rebuilding itself from the ground up. The spirit of the times celebrated simplicity and hard work. The Qipao, with its connections to the old society and bourgeois lifestyles, gradually faded from everyday life. For the next 3 decades, people wore standardized blue or gray uniforms, the Lenin suit, the people's suit. These clothes symbolized equality, collective effort, and labor. The Qipao, with its curves and decorative details that once celebrated femininity, was now seen as out of step with the times. It entered a long period of silence. But the Qipao didn't disappear, it simply moved to a different stage. In Hong Kong, the Qipao found new life. At that time, Hong Kong was a British colony experiencing rapid economic growth. Western pop culture flooded in through movies and magazines. Influenced by Western fashion, Hong Kong's Qipao became more form-fitting, more daring. A new style emerged: sheer fabrics, more skin, ultra-slim cuts. These Qipaos became iconic in Hong Kong cinema of the era, shaping how the Western world imagined Eastern femininity. In Taiwan, the Qipao was preserved as the national dress. The authorities there saw themselves as the inheritors of traditional Chinese culture. The Qipao became formal wear for important occasions. The style here remained relatively elegant and dignified, carrying forward the aesthetics of the 1940s. In 1978, China began its historic policy of reform and opening up. The doors of the country swung open again, and people started connecting with the outside world. Minds were freed, wallets grew thicker, and fashion finally began to diversify. By the 1980s, the Qipao started reappearing in people's lives. But at this stage, it was mostly seen as formal wear or work uniforms. Hotel staff, flight attendants, hostesses began wearing it. It hadn't yet returned to everyday fashion, but at least it was no longer forbidden. Then came 2000, and a film that made the world fall in love with the qipao all over again. In the Mood for Love premiered at the Cannes Film Festival and created waves. Maggie Cheung, wearing over 20 different qipaos throughout the film, captured everything: the restraint, the grace, the sensuality, and the quiet sorrow of Eastern femininity. Director Wong Kar-wai used the qipao to tell the story of his heroine's inner world. When she wore simple, understated qipaos, she was holding back. When she wore vibrant, colorful ones, she was yearning. Those fitted, richly patterned dresses, carried by the film's global reach, became the deepest memory of Eastern aesthetics for audiences around the world. Around the same time, the qipao secured its special place in Chinese weddings. The bride wears a dragon and phoenix embroidered gown for the tea ceremony, then changes into a red qipao for the wedding toast. It became an essential part of the modern Chinese wedding. Entering the 21st century, the qipao has fully embraced diversity. It's no longer about following rules, it's about making choices. Designers have broken all the old boundaries. The mandarin collar can disappear, transforming into a deep V-neck. The decorative knots can morph into abstract art. The silhouette no longer has to be fitted. It can flow into an A-line or an O shape like a piece of wearable art. The qipao is no longer just one thing, yet it remains the ultimate choice for special occasions. On a Chinese bride's wedding day, at important international conferences, the qipao is still the first choice to express Eastern elegance. From the riding robes of Manchu women in the 17th century to the everyday fashion of young women on 21st century streets, for 300 years, the qipao has never stopped evolving. It has witnessed Chinese women's journey from bound feet to a global stage. It has charted the course of East and West, from collision to fusion. And it carries within its seams the patience, the skill, and the warmth of countless artisans' hands. This is the story of the qipao. One dress, 3 centuries, a nation's changing idea of beauty, and the voice of countless women speaking through silk.